Hello Rebrand gang, and welcome to episode 34 of Rebrand Everything. Today we are going to be rebranding White Castle, and thanks to Caden for submitting this rebrand idea over on rebrandeverything.com. Let's go. So then, the current White Castle logo looks like this. And now we don't actually have White Castle as far as I know in the UK, but I know roughly what it is just because of stuff that I've seen on TV. So just in case you don't know, White Castle is a fast food restaurant that's been going since 1920s, and they're famous for their small square hamburgers. So as usual, I started out by doing some research on the background of the company and seeing if there was anything within that I could pull out and implement into some of my logo options. I learned that it's called White Castle because the original restaurants looked like White Castles, so that was a perfect link. And also I found out randomly that the burgers have 5 holes inside the actual meat part, and that just helps them cook quicker and without needing to be flipped. I didn't really need to tell you that, but I just thought it was interesting. I also looked back at their logo history, as sometimes that can help spark new ideas, as you can sort of take something out of that and sort of modernize it for the current day. And as I'm not inside the full American culture like a person that's grown up around this brand would, I thought I'd do something a little bit different. So I typed in White Castle memes just to get a glimpse of sort of how people perceive it. It was quite funny, but although it did show that the White Castle burgers are addictive and Moorish and and they've got this whole crave concept going on, it wasn't quite as insightful as I thought it might be, with almost all of the memes being about getting diarrhea from eating it. So that's definitely a concept that's not going to make it into the logo. So now that I've learned a little bit about the company, the logo history and the general public's perception of it, it's time to start sketching out some ideas. So when sketching, I am just getting all of my ideas that are in my head out onto paper, starting with writing out a few keywords just to keep my mind in the right place as I'm developing it, as it's easy to sort of go down an avenue and get really caught up in it, and then just look back at the actual kind of brief and just think, well, what the hell have I just done? I've just wasted an hour drawing out some random ideas that have nothing to do with it, just because I kind of got carried away. So I like to keep them words in the top left just to re-anchor each time. So I like the shape and the idea behind the current White Castle icon, so I was looking at ways of developing that into something cleaner and more iconic maybe. They've got that certain style now, but that's kind of the different thicknesses of the lines and everything like that isn't my exact preferred style, so I just wanted to have a think about playing with that. And then I was also drawing out some completely different ideas to explore some other angles on the castle theme. I started looking at making a castle icon that was also the initials of White Castle. I thought that would be quite clever and cool. And give it that double meaning that I like to give. But then I realised that the initials are WC, which is going to quickly be noticed and then negatively linked to the memes that I just showed you a minute ago. So I dropped and flushed that idea away pretty quickly. So as you can see, I sketched out quite a lot of varied ideas here, a lot of 3D ones and some flat versions as well. So at this point it was time to move into Illustrator to develop them further. If you're enjoying this video so far, please remember to press like, it really helps the channel out. And also, if you're on Instagram, add me at Rebrand Everything. I post stories, design tips, design memes, and just general logos and stuff like that. So at Rebrand Everything, I will see you on Instagram. So for this week's first option, I wanted to rework the current logo, as I like the castle icon that they've got. I think it's a good shape and it's got that nice 3D effect that I just generally like, and it looks quite dramatic and looks quite cool, so I think it's something we can work with. So first of all, I needed to get rid of the text inside it, so I just took that out and then cleaned up some of the details, extended the lines where I needed to, and sort of filled in the gaps and just made it sort of one clean vector object. Actually, one thing to note on this is once I'd cleaned up one side, what I could do is just grab it, copy it, paste it, flip it, and then use the Pathfinder command to just make it all one solid object, and it just saves me cleaning up both sides. I also toned down the yellow slightly, as I felt it was a little bit strong and overpowering. Once I put the icon next to the text, I thought that the lines were getting a little bit lost, so I thickened them up just to bring that balance back between the icon and the text. And the font I used for this is a font from Font Squirrel called Germania 1, and I actually used that same font in the Rockstar rebrand I did a few weeks back. And also, as a link to the previous brand, I did just outline the text, grab the dot on top of the I and make that the yellow as well, just to give it that little link back to the previous brand. So this option is kind of a development of their current logo. So for option 2, I wanted to illustrate a castle in the simplest possible way, so using the bare minimum shapes that still is instantly recognisable as a castle. So just to make sure everything was accurate and perfect and evenly spaced, I used the grid in Illustrator, and I used Snap to Grid as well, just so nothing could go wrong. I didn't actually like the panel across that icon, as it broke the icon into two pieces, which then made it look unbalanced. Even when the part at the top and the part at the bottom were the same height, the irregular shape at the top sort of has more negative space in it, so it feels just off balance badly. So I decided to scrap the idea of having the text over the castle and put it over to the right, so it's just neat and tidy. But then because of that, I thought it looked a little bit corporate, so then I thought a good way to remedy that would be to change the font to something that's a little bit imperfect and a little bit irregular. And I found Nexa Rust, which is this big, cool, funky font. And then the icon didn't match the font once I'd done that, so I just roughened up them edges a little bit just so it had that sort of imperfect and loose feel instead of that dead straight corporate feel.
3.
So I think I mentioned before that I really like how their current logo uses perspective to make a cool silhouette, so I wanted to develop that concept with my own style and in my own kind of way. So I wanted to make a super clean geometric version that was simple and just generally looks cool and just much more simplified than what they've got now in a way, but still clearly a castle. So I started out with a hexagon and I started building the left hand side into a castle shape just by basically putting blue boxes over the white area and then cutting that off with another hexagon that's smaller inside in front that is white, just so we got that clean perspective. And then my intentions were to flip this once I'd built that side and use it on the other side, and then I thought about maybe making it in yellow, kind of like a throwback to their current logo. But then when I'd made the left side, I actually just sort of took a step back and thought this looks really nice and strong. It's still clearly a castle, it's super iconic, and I didn't think that I needed to complicate it anymore with any more shapes. I just thought like that looked good. And as a little hidden bonus as well, I also thought that the icon kind of looks like a W and a C, but not enough to make you think that it's a toilet, so I kind of thought that was just a good little hidden bonus as well. I'm pretty sure that in them comments someone will say that the font I used is too corporate or it's soulless, but then I just thought it worked well with the style of the icon, so that's why I chose the font I chose. And I'm becoming conscious that I keep making icons and then just putting the word mark over to the right hand side of them. So I spent a little bit more time on this version playing with some alternative layouts, and I still prefer the text on the right, but then I also do like this stacked version as well, so I think that's the one we'll use.
4.
So for option 4, I started looking at creating some 3D options that were supposed to be like iconic versions of different angles of the castle. If you look back at the sketching stage, you see that I've drawn a few with different sort of perspective angles, as if the camera's like in the castle looking out and stuff like that. So I spent quite a while trying to make these work, but they were just looking all too complicated, and I felt like I was making my life hard for no reason, as they just looked... I was having to use tints to differentiate the colours, and it's starting to look more like an illustration than a logo, which is something that I just don't like. So I pretty much scrapped all of them ideas and just left the computer for a little while, and then just came back to it a few hours later, or I think it was actually in the evening after having a morning session. So once I'd left it for a few hours and came back to it, I realised that I was just thinking into it too much, just making it too complicated, so I decided to draw out just a super simple icon version of an aerial view of a castle. Again, just using the snap to grid in Illustrator to make sure all my boxes were perfectly square. I just overlaid them so in the corner but overhanging, just to give this kind of cool effect, and it's kind of how I imagine it is, like an aerial view of a castle looking down on it, so you've got the bits on the edge that kind of stick out. And then I grabbed all of them and pathfindered them all into one shape, and just so the castle looked white, I just used a stroke around that rather than filling it with blue. So because of the irregular shape I'd created with them boxes, I needed a font that was going to match up with that, and I spent a little bit of time fiddling around with some different fonts trying to find that perfect match. But then I thought a slab serif font worked well, and sort of it breaks the grids in the same way that the icon does as well. I tried both a landscape and a stacked version, which I think actually could both be used. Maybe the landscape would be perfect for the header of the website, and then the stacked version where the text is inside the icon could be perfect for the top of a burger box perhaps. And I think the shape I've got there gives a lot of scope for the rest of the branding.
5.
For option 5, I wanted to use the text from the original logo because it's recognisable already and it generally fits that castle theme well. I mean, I couldn't find what font it was, but it just generally, it's got that black letter style that I think really complements the castle design. So I thought to make it look a little bit more established, regal and important looking, I would create a shield sort of cresty looking logo, which should hopefully visualise the heritage and fit in nicely with the castle vibe. And then I felt like add in the impressive established date, added some extra weight to their proposition, and there was a nice gap in the bottom of the shield anyway, so that held it well. I really like the look of the solid blue version, but the pedantic side of me just couldn't allow a company that's called White Castle to have a logo that was actually a blue castle. So I swapped the fill in the stroke, so we have an outline stroke, so the actual castle was white, and that just put my mind at rest. And then as I was using a stroke, it added some extra angles and complication just where you've got them new lines being created between the castle part and the shield part. So I just combined the two and simplified that, which removed that horizontal line and just made it a little bit cleaner and neater. Okay then, Rebrand gang, so before I show you them final options, I just want to remind you to press the little button up here and then vote for your favourite, and then head straight down to the comments below and let me know why that was your favourite. If you haven't already pressed like on this video, please press like on this video if you liked it. That will really help the channel out. And if you want to see a video like this every single Saturday, rebranding different companies, press the subscribe button, and if you want a notification, press the bell as well. If you have an idea of a company that you'd like me to have a look at rebranding, visit rebrandeverything.com and fill out the form, and I will add that to my ever-growing list of rebrands to do in the future. Okay then, Rebrand gang, let's see them final options.